March 14, 2012, my son Thomas lost his battle with the disease of addiction. I now belong to a club that no parent should ever belong to. Do you know the signs? Do you know the trends that children are doing in today's world? Do you know the signs and symptoms? Do you know the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? I want to empower and educate Long Islanders by bringing a force of professionals and how to prevent the disease of addiction. Long Island in Crisis. Good evening and welcome to Long Island in Crisis. This show is dedicated to the education and empowerment of family members that are struggling with the loved one's substance use disorder, and also for the person struggling, to bring hope, number one, to bring resources, and mainly just to educate on substance use disorder. It's a very misunderstood disease. It's not a choice. It is absolutely a disease of the mind. And we have to start giving it its recognition as a mind disease and not as a choice. We are judging way too many people, and we're losing a generation of children. And we have to remember that they're children. They're not deserving of dying. You know, I read way too many comments of, well, they got what they deserved. No one deserves to die from a disease. It is not their choice. And can we all remember that they're children and we all make mistakes? I lost my son Thomas at the age of 21, so I'm all too familiar with what a family will live through with the insanity of the disease of addiction. And my special guest tonight is Daryl St. George, and he is, you are a number of things. Thank you for your service as a Marine. And now you are a teacher in Northport High School, and you are a social studies teacher, but you do so much for your community. You're a civic leader, you're civic-minded, and you are also really leading. Northport is very innovative, and that's why I love talking to everyone from Northport. You're very innovative in what the school district does with the kids and for the kids, but what you empower the kids to do for themselves. And I think that's an important statement to make. I also met just recently with ISLIP, the superintendent, Susan Schnabel. ISLIP also very innovative in what they do for their community. So we have to, every community on Long Island, every community across the United States should be doing this, as far as I'm concerned. Right. We have to move away from what the expectations are for Common Core if we don't raise a young person capable of coping skills, life skills, mindfulness, and everything else. Subjects can be taught at any age. Those things need to be ingrained in their being from a very young age. So I know we're going to be doing a few shows, so you're going to be a regular for a little bit. So we definitely want to get into what you do for the veterans, because veterans afflicted with post-traumatic stress disorder and the disease of addiction go hand in hand. Yes. And we need to do more for them. Right. But let's talk about kids for a minute. We were just talking off air about, when they're engaged in school, we have a lot more eyes on them. But we're starting to lose this generation from 18 to 24. Right. When they leave school, they may not be going to college, or they may be going to a local college, which is all great. Right. But we're losing them because when they leave, they're binge drinking, and they're really, if they haven't tried substances, they are trying substances, and it's off to the races also. Right. What has been your experience?
Well, my experience as a teacher is I feel that we have sadly, we've been failing them in many ways.
Yes.
We've been getting certain things right, but on the whole, educationally, we've gone backwards and we've made a lot of mistakes. I see that academically, and unfortunately, it goes from academics and it carries over into this area. I truly believe that the goal of education should be to help the kids realize, or at least get them to start the process of thinking about what is it that they want to do with their life. And I know that that's a huge question, and they don't need the answer to it. It's just that they need to be reflecting on it. They need to be thinking about it. And it has to be step by step. That's not the first step. Prior to that, they should be asking the question of who am I as well. Like, these are the kinds of questions that are not on the Regents. They're not on standardized tests. They can't be measured. Some of my colleagues get very uncomfortable when we talk about these things, but these are things that I think should be discussed in the classroom. Who are you? How do you define yourself? What is it you want to do with your life? What are the things you're passionate about? What are the things that get you going? And we're not doing that in the schools.
We can ask a 12-year-old what gets them going, and of course, there'll be many boys that want to be NFL superstars, so what you ask them, but that passion and that drive can just be, well, let's set a goal. How would we get to that?
Right.
So all of those questions that you ask really goes back to other basics.
Sure.
Goal setting.
Yep.
May not ever reach that goal, but now we're familiar with goal setting and the expectations that I have to set on myself and the discipline to reach those goals.
Right.
Those are life skills. So all of these things lead into life skills.
Yeah.
The other thing I think we miss in all aspects, community, home, school, is we can tell kids to let things roll off their shoulders. You're better than that, you're good, you're this, you're that. But we're not teaching them how to have good self-esteem. What does self-esteem look like?
Right.
When something hurtful happens to you, something hurtful happens to you.
Right.
It's not always easy to roll that off.
Right.
And without those coping skills, and I think that bullying in school is a huge problem.
Right.
They're being bullied from everywhere in the world, really,
Yeah.
not just in school anymore.
Right.
Not just in their world.
Right.
Because of their cell phones.
Right. So I think bullying is a symptom of a deeper problem that we're struggling with societally that goes well beyond education in schools. I think bullying is a symptom of a culture in crisis.
Yes.
To use the title of your show. And I think that symptom is, it's one of many symptoms. I think these terrible shootings that we're reading about is another symptom of this problem. So what is this problem? How do we define this problem? I think that this problem is the inability to follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We've lost touch with that. I don't know when that happened, but I believe we can get it back, because I see that there are moments where I see it put into practice. I see it exercised. So it's not completely gone.
No, it isn't completely gone, but it's that mindfulness.
Yeah.
And we always come back to mindfulness. Before you say something, text something, any of those, any form of communication that's available to you.
Right.
Would I want this said to myself?
Right.
And if I wouldn't, then just be reflective for a moment.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
When you're hurt or when something happens to you, that is every human being's gut instinct.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have learned, bite your tongue.
Right.
For 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And walk away. Disengage.
Right.
If you still feel the need to say something, and what did I do to provoke
Sure.
that behavior? Always going to ask me that question first.
Right.
And if I can answer, I didn't do anything, well, maybe that other person had something going on in their life that happened that was a horrible day, and I shouldn't judge them.
Right.
Just let it go and see what happens the next time.
Right.
Forgive, never forget.
Right. I mean, I know it's trite, but there's some truth to it. Hurt people. And
always.
What you're talking about is this idea of compassion too.
Yes.
And that's difficult for a lot of people. I mean, even personally, I know that I have difficulty with it. I can intellectualize it. I can understand that when someone hurts me, I need to kind of try to understand where they're coming from and ask the question, like you said, what did I do to contribute to this? But when you're in the heat of the moment, sometimes you lose sight of that, and it just can
Without a doubt.
metastasize. It gets really bad. So what you're talking about is that idea of just pausing and reflecting and giving yourself time to process it. And when you're able to do that, I think you'll find, as you're kind of describing, that you come back to it with a whole new outlook.
A lot of times, and believe me, there's been many a moment, but what I will say is I'm not going to say what's on my mind right this moment.
Right.
Because I can't take the words back.
Right, yeah. Once it's out there.
Can't take it back.
Yeah.
And it may not be what I really mean to say.
Right.
And it may be what I really mean to say. I'll let you know.
Right.
Give me a few minutes.
Right, right. So now I think we're gravitating closer to another very important concept and point, which is the idea of forgiveness. Look, we make mistakes, and it is important to say to yourself, I need to think before I speak, because if once I say it, it's out there, and now I've caused some pain. And unfortunately, we don't always do that. And when we hurt someone, it is what it is, and it's happened, it's occurred. You can't change it, you can't take it back, but that's where forgiveness comes into play, and it's so important. And I think all of these things that we're talking about, unfortunately, there's such an important part of this epidemic we're faced with, the idea of compassion, the idea of forgiveness, the idea of understanding.
And especially for children, because kids have all these feelings inside of them.
Right.
And when they have all those, nobody wants to feel all those feelings at the same time.
Right.
They suck.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're 12 years old
Right.
and maybe you're not fitting in.
Right.
But if I smoke a joint or I drink a beer, I might fit in.
Right.
Or I might feel comfortable enough to engage with other kids.
Right.
Because I'm going to lose my inhibitions.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we empower children not to get past their inhibitions
Right.
and have the other person be receptive to maybe that they're a little different than they are?
Right. Well, so now that's kind of taken in another direction, but that's a great point you're making. I think we need to do a better job, especially in the schools, of getting the kids to embrace their uniqueness.
Yes.
And that's hard as a teenager. I even remember, I mean, I'm not an old man, but you want to fit in, you want to conform, and you don't want to stand out. I mean, you already feel like you stand out, and it's the worst feeling in the world. You just want to you want to fit in with the rest of the group. You want to fit in especially with the cool group. That's what you want.
Yes.
But I think we need to try to teach the kids that the people that have inspired us for so long are the people that stood out, that they were different. If they weren't different, they probably wouldn't have gotten where they got.
Correct.
Like look at Abraham Lincoln. He was a weird dude. I've read a lot of books on him. He suffered from depression. He was withdrawn. He was odd. But he was also, now we look back, and he was Abraham Lincoln. And you could go down to Albert Einstein. I mean, look at that crazy hair. He looked like a whack job.
Oh yeah.
So
and
many people.
he was not successful in school.
Right, that's right. Interestingly enough, a good example of somebody who his teacher thought this guy he's going nowhere fast.
Correct. And who knew?
So we have to show the kids that that's okay.
And they have to be, and that's the part that I think no one is really learning.
Yeah, it's hard. Because again, going back in the classroom environment, it's hard. You mentioned Common Core. So many people feel so strongly about Common Core, and yet if you were to ask them, what is Common Core? They couldn't answer it. People in favor of it and people against it. Usually what you'll get are very vague responses. Like, for instance, somebody who's in favor of Common Core, they'll say, I get this a lot, well, we have to have standards. So my question to them is, all right, I agree with that. I'm opposed to it, but I do believe in standards, so let me ask you, what are the standards in Common Core that you're in favor of? And 9 times out of 10, when you ask somebody that, they can't tell you. I've looked up some of the Common Core standards. They're ridiculous. They're absolutely absurd. So people who are opposed to Common Core are not opposed to standards. It's just they have to be meaningful standards. And there's a reverse to that. If you talk to somebody who is not in favor of Common Core, they'll give you usually a very vague response. Well, it's over-testing. Well, there's some truth to that, but testing is also important. We have to try to find a balance. But regardless, putting all of that aside, Common Core is part of a larger culture that we're kind of struggling in right now, and it is indirectly and directly creating this environment where it is stifling the growth of the kids, and it is
Yes.
contributing to the growth of this epidemic. I truly believe
Because they
that.
have anxiety. They hear at home Common Core. They hear on news Common
Yes.
Core. Don't take the test. Opt
Right.
out of the test. They have no idea what that means.
Right.
They don't.
No.
Let's agree on the kids don't have any idea, but
And
they
neither do
have
the teachers.
anxiety
Right.
about it.
Right.
I've never been in favor when my kids were little. ELP, what was it?
I'm not sure what one of the advanced programs. Or?
No, my daughter, let's see, my daughter's 28. So when she was in 5th grade, so maybe 18 years ago, there was a certain test that they took, 3rd grade, 5th grade.
Yeah.
We went to extra help in the morning. The school had everybody was mandated to go to
Sure,
this extra help. My 10-year-old was scared of that test. So I think we should have higher standards
Sure.
because kids can meet them.
Right.
But don't teach to the test.
No.
Just teach.
Right. And
Just agree to teach.
Right.
And there are measures that you can do testing in class at the end of each chapter. And who's struggling can really be brought forth much easier.
Of course.
There shouldn't be test anxiety. School needs to be fun again.
Right. And it certainly, I mean, it does have to, you do want it to be enjoyable for the kids, but it should also be challenging. But here's the thing, what it should not be is a scary place to go. And you just said that, your daughter was scared to go to school. And you just mentioned another interesting point. You said your daughter is about 28.
Yes.
You see, so what this is this is not something new, unfortunately. This has
No.
been going on for decades.
But my kids, so my oldest is 28. All of a sudden, 2nd or 3rd grade for the one of the younger ones, spelling didn't matter anymore. I go, doesn't, we just want them to be free. Well, I don't agree with that. Spelling does matter.
Sure.
Grammar matters.
Sure. Kids
Today,
right.
tomorrow, 30
Well,
years from now,
it was
grammar's
almost-
going to matter.
It was almost as if they were predicting the future, right? Because technically, and I agree with you, spelling does matter. But in a sense, you could make the argument, no, it doesn't matter, because even when I'm on my phone texting and it's so annoying, autocorrect, the phone corrects my spelling, even if the phone is wrong, on the computer.
And the phone usually doesn't, it says something that I don't want to say.
Right. And look at how people communicate, mostly through texting, and no grammar needed.
No
Not even
grammar
whole
needed.
words, LOL,
Right.
BRB,
Right.
OMG. It's like...
But that's not, so if I need to speak to someone when I'm going to go for an interview and I'm all of 21 years old, can I communicate to someone?
No.
Can I write a resume?
No.
No.
There's no
'Cause I have
communication.
I don't have social skills.
And that's not measured on a test, so how do you measure that?
Right.
I know that. I could, by the end, from September to June, I can look at my class and I can say who has, and I resist using this, but it is what it is. I could say who would pass and who would fail without even having to look at my grade book, without having to look at the tests, because you can tell, a good teacher can tell, which students are growing and which students are not. And if we didn't have to worry about all of the things that are being dumped on us, we would have more time to help those kids that are struggling, to help those kids that are having a hard time, and then we can have those meaningful, important conversations. Who are you?
Right.
What is it that you want to... I think I had mentioned this...
Or something as simple as this. You see a student growing, and then their growth starts to slow.
Sure.
Hey, Thomas, what's going on?
Right.
Everything okay? You can come to me anytime.
Right.
Do we need to discuss anything? Or what are you struggling with?
Right.
That's when something becomes meaningful.
Sure.
Because maybe something is going on at home with another student, with whatever.
Right.
And maybe you're going to be that teacher. We're going to go to commercial and we're going to pick up on that because that's an important thing. We'll be right back.
You smell so good, I won't have to bathe the next 2 weeks. Anything. So, here, laugh a little harder. All right?
I will take him. I would be proud to show you off, you little old weirdo man.
Get a new sweater. The worst dressed man here tonight. Right? Look, get that laugh, and get it in there tonight because nobody else is gonna laugh like her. She's under drugs, all right?
Galaxy Luxury Coach is a full-service limousine and party bus company. Family-owned and operated, we are an industry leader with over 25 years of experience in providing best-in-class luxury transportation for your special event. Whether it's your precious wedding day, an all-day wine tour out east, your high school prom, that special birthday, or just an amazing night on the town, our professional chauffeurs stand ready to ensure your special event is truly special. Galaxy Luxury Coach has one of the largest and modern party bus fleets in the New York area. Our party buses are simply nightclubs on wheels. Concert sound systems, light shows, lasers and strobes, multicolor LED lighting brilliantly lights your party bus inside and out. For corporate and more laid-back events, we will cater to your specific needs and requests. What sets Galaxy aside from all others in the luxury transportation industry is our attention to detail in customizing our services to your special event. At Galaxy, it's all about you and your guests. Galaxy customers return time and time again because they know they can trust Galaxy to help deliver those lifetime memorable moments. Step aboard and let your Galaxy experience begin.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis, and we are still continuing our conversation off air. But kids need, you need the opportunity. You do start to know your kids.
Yeah.
You do. It's a gift that teachers have. But you don't have the time
Right.
to give to them what you may see that they need.
Right.
Something's bothering them. Someone else is bothering them in school, or it could be someone at home, or it could be a lot of things.
Right.
So describe to me, I'm going to say it out loud. I see it in today's world. Parents are atrocious at the school teachers
Right.
and at the administration. I know that if marijuana or anything is found in a locker, well, do you have video?
Yeah.
Do you have video of my son or daughter
Right.
putting it into their locker?
Yeah.
That should not be your first response as a
Right.
parent.
Right.
No one's against your kid.
Right.
They're trying to save you and your family a lot of anguish.
Right. Right.
Because if we can intervene and have, school and community be a place where your kids are still safe, that someone's still watching out for
Right.
them, we'd have a different world.
Yeah.
I truly believe.
I agree.
But when we're always, well, you're not putting it on their record, no, they didn't do it, who cares, it's only pot, it's only
Right.
drinking, it's only whatever.
Right. Yeah.
How would that change your job description?
Well, thankfully, I've not had too many problems with parents. More often than not, I've had a very good relationship with the
Excellent.
parents of the kids I've had. But I'm not going to lie, there have been moments, there have been times, thankfully very rarely, but where I've encountered difficulties with parents. More often than not, in the few times where it's been an issue, it does seem to be rooted in what you were describing before. There is a sense of denial because often the communication is beginning because the student is probably not doing well, and And that's unfortunate that you have to communicate with each other, parents and teachers, when something's going wrong. If only, and again, this goes back to the time factor, we could talk about when things are happening that are positive. And those moments happen, but they're not as common as when
Yes.
there's the contact is
Of
made
course.
because of why are they failing, what did this why did this progress report say missing work, or whatever the case may be. And then as the teacher, you'll have to say, well, the student's not doing their homework, or their attendance is really not good, or whatever the issue may be. And if it escalates, often there are a series of excuses that are made, and then it's often deflected onto the teacher. Well, this is what you're doing wrong. And that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
And look, teachers aren't perfect either. I've made mistakes as a teacher, and I like to think that when I do, I try to own up to them. But when you're dealing with an individual that thinks that their child can do no wrong, it's not good, because it's preventing you from doing something that you have to do as a teacher, and that sometimes parents have to do for their children, which is tell them sometimes when they're failing. I think we talked about this on one of your shows. Sometimes kids need to fail, because you're going to fail in real life. That's going to happen.
All times people need. How do you learn?
Right.
Do you learn by always doing the things correct?
Right.
No, you learn by making a mistake.
Right.
And having the consequence for the mistake.
Right.
Not mom and dad coming
Right.
up and fixing
Sure. Yep.
the mistake,
Right.
but having the conversation. This is the consequence for you not doing your homework.
Right.
For you not, your grade is reflective of your effort and of your, laziness.
Right. Or whatever the issue is.
Or whatever it is.
Whatever caused the failure. But
Correct.
more often than not, when you have that uncomfortable conversation, it's usually the question sooner or later comes out, why did you fail my kid?
Exactly.
Not, why did my kid fail? Why did you fail my kid?
Right.
And that right there is the problem. So that's a piece of it. That is what's more unsettling to me with respect to the parents is, and again, this goes back to why it's very rare that I've had any issues with the parents, because for the most part, there's really no communication. And I think that alludes to a more unsettling problem for me, which is my take, that there are a lot of parents out there that are just not involved in their kids' lives.
And, this is because we're not, it's hard. It's hard to live on Long Island. It's
Sure.
hard to have dinner every night.
Yeah.
It is very difficult.
Of
So this
course.
is no criticism.
No.
And
I'm not a parent. I don't want to come across as criticism.
really of society now.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it really is, a criticism of society. It used to be, my mom was home.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I had a good day or a bad day,
Right.
I ran home, and my mom was there to
Right.
listen to me.
Right.
Tell her if I had
Right.
a good day or a bad day.
Right.
And that comfort level of someone being there.
Right.
And I knew that was there. In today's world, mom and dad, really for the most part, both working.
Yeah.
But we've also created this environment where you have to be in sports.
Right.
And at 8 years old, you better commit to the sport
Sure.
that you want to get a scholarship in.
Right.
Why?
Right.
There's so much pressure. And we've heard that from when we have the kids here.
Right.
They will tell you, but no one's listening to them
Right.
say, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
So you can have a kid be a gymnast, and a good friend of our family, gymnast from
Right.
the age of 4, could have gone to the Olympic team, like that level of an athlete.
Right.
And then at 15, I'm not doing this anymore, because it was her whole life.
Yeah.
We don't want that to happen
No.
either.
No.
Let kids be kids a little bit.
Yeah.
Let them enjoy.
Right.
Take a little, the world is a crazy place.
Sure.
But we're not doing a great job of getting them sober out of high school.
Right. Right. And I think it relates a little bit to go back to the parents too, because I certainly don't want to come across as coming down on the parents. And you're 100% right. The parents are under so much pressure, just like the kids, and so much stress, because it is very difficult to live here on Long Island. Of course, financially, it's very expensive. But I also think that this is a problem that we're faced with, which is the idea of community seems to be missing.
Absolutely.
I think that that's an issue. And that's creating some of the stress that the parents are under. I mean, I talked to my grandparents, so now we're talking about, 50 years ago when they
Yes.
had young kids and even more than 50 years. And the neighbors knew each other.
Yes.
Everybody, it was almost as if you all...
But even, so my oldest is 28.
Right,
We must have had 15 kids in the neighborhood. They all came out and played. We all knew each
Yeah.
other,
right.
and we all helped each other.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Can you watch? Sure. And we would be reciprocal of that.
Right.
But if I saw any one of those 15 kids where they weren't supposed to be, what are you doing over here?
Right.
Just like what happened to me when I was little.
Yep.
We need to go back to that.
I agree. And I mean, I don't want to romanticize the past because there were problems in the past.
Of
but
course.
That's something that I think we had it right and we've lost it somewhere along the way and we've got to bring it back together. And it doesn't just include, so when I think of that idea of community, and I see it so now to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about it from the perspective of one of my other roles, I see it as a civic leader, the Green Lawn Civic Association. I'm the president of the GCA. And we have a thriving civic association. It's very exciting to see this civic association grow. And I think that a big part of why this civic association is growing is it's rooted in this instinctual desire for people to come together and create a sense of community. To
Everyone
cultivate
needs
that.
to feel like
We
they
want it.
belong.
Yeah.
We want it.
We want it.
We do.
So I think there's the desire. The desire is there. We just have to figure out how we can do it. And it starts simply with the neighbors and the golden rule and talk like what you just talked about. I see one of my neighbor's kids doing something they're not doing. It's not that I'm going after them and it's not a gossipy thing. It's because I care and I want to say, hey, what's going on over here?
But when kids were in my backyard,
Right.
which they were, we had a basketball
Sure.
court, whatever, and I heard things that you'd go outside and go, come here.
Right.
That language is not allowed here.
Right.
Now, whether he went home or she went home and said, Mrs. Ventura yelled at me,
Right.
good.
Right.
That's what the answer was.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, what did you do to
Right.
deserve her
Right.
yelling at you? What were you doing?
Right. Right.
Because nobody, criticizes. So, again, we need to be open to saying, hey, you know what? I saw, Johnny and Mary behind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they were doing there, but it didn't feel right to me.
Right.
You may want to investigate
Right.
that. The response shouldn't be, go yourself because
Right.
it's none of your business what
Right.
my kid, I know exactly what
Right.
my kid is doing. No. It just means, wow, isn't that nice that someone is thinking and caring about my children?
It's the golden rule again.
It's the golden rule again.
Wouldn't you want, if your kid was
Absolutely.
doing something wrong, wouldn't you want somebody to intervene just as you're doing? So there's that idea. And then and coupling that with that idea of community and bringing it back. And it starts with the neighbors and then you expand, bring in the churches. That's another thing we've been talking about. Bring in the synagogues, bring in the religious organizations.
No, everything.
The businesses, the local businesses. I grew up in Northport. There were certain places that we would go to, and the owners, when we as kids would go there, they knew who we were, and whether it was the pizza place or the bagel place, and I think that would be advantageous to the businesses too. They're popular. More kids are coming in.
When you're community-minded,
Yeah.
you're not going to drive to Comac to get something.
You're going to go in the area.
You're going to want to take care of your neighbor that lives
Yeah.
and works in your community.
Right.
But what it brings to children, which helps with substance abuse,
Mm-hmm.
is I'm protected.
Right.
I'm protected in my community. I have a sense of well-being.
Right.
I have a sense that I can go to other people because every kid needs a go-to person.
Yeah.
May not be mom and dad.
No.
Maybe grandma and grandpa. That's who my kids loved my parents.
Right.
So when we lost them, very big hole in their lives.
Yeah.
A coach, a teacher,
Right.
a priest,
A rabbi.
a rabbi,
Right.
the guy that owns the pizza place.
Yeah.
That you don't know what connects people.
Oh.
So we could always say it's a soul thing.
Sure.
And sometimes it is.
I think it is.
But, when you can recognize and say, everybody, it could be the lunch lady. It doesn't really matter who your go-to person is.
Right.
But that child feels safe, and that child, it's those people that can see the change,
Right.
the little nuances
Right.
that when they're not home, because kids do a great job at home,
Right.
I'm saying everything's fine,
Right.
or going right to their
Sure.
room, because they're very self-sufficient in their room.
Right.
TV, phone, computer, everything's there.
Right.
They don't need to engage with the family.
No. No.
And we've lost that.
Right.
So it's kind of nice if everybody would watch the same TV show, right?
Right.
Or movie,
Right.
or go for a walk.
Right.
But it's just going back to very simple, basic things
Right.
that we've lost.
Yeah, and I think we have to really make a conscious effort to bring some of that back. And it starts so incredibly locally. It starts within the family, doing something like you just mentioned before. Tonight is family night. We're going to have dinner together. We're going to watch a movie. And then expand beyond there. Have block parties. When's the last time you saw a block party? Everybody's going to close down the street, and we're going to have a block party. Get beyond that even. And we have opportunities for this, like the firemen's fairs at the
Yes.
different communities and villages and hamlets. Continue with those things, but try to create more events like that where it's bringing people out. And that's where maybe the Civic Association can come into play. And bring the schools in. I mean, that's one of the things that, to talk about the summit, which we've talked about. The summit, the first year we did the summit was bringing the schools together. Then the second year we did it, I said, let's go beyond the schools. Of course, the schools are focal, the students are what's central, but let's include the libraries now, because now with Nooks and Kindles,
Yeah,
libraries are adapting and they're becoming community centers. So that's where we did the drug take back, and let's involve other civic associations, and let's try to bring in the churches, because that's how we are going to combat this problem. We've said this before. What we're really alluding to, this idea of bringing back community, is a cultural revolution.
We have to shift society,
Yeah.
and it has to start. Unfortunately, kids that are going into the high school next year,
It's too late.
It's too late. But if we can start that in kindergarten,
Yep.
everybody comes out. But we
Yep.
need to build that
That's right.
again, and give them that sense. But children too. And correct me if I'm wrong, I just see it with my kids, with other kids. Kids like to do good.
Yes. Yes.
And when they're praised for it, and you talk about the good things that they do instead of the wrong things that they
Right.
do, if we focus on that, they feel better, they want to do more.
Right.
You have now a community-minded young person
Right.
who's going to bring value to the community.
Exactly.
When I was little, and my kids, I'll use my kids again. Next door to me was, after my neighbor lost his wife, or even as he got older,
Right.
I would say to my boys, go and shovel his driveway. And they'd say,
Yeah.
well, I go, no, you're not going to get paid for it.
Right.
You're going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
That's right.
My neighbor always gave them money, but
Right.
don't do it because you expect it.
Right.
Do it because it's the right thing to
Right.
do. Would you want Poppy to have to go out and shovel his own driveway? It's a simple, conversation to have with yourself.
That golden rule again.
That golden rule again. So, we can shift society.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. It really is simple.
Right.
Nothing that we're talking about is really crazy.
It isn't. But, what it's going to take is it's going to take time. And what we seem to be alluding to something I'm very passionate about, I know you're passionate about, which is prevention.
Yes.
And we need
It's
to be
all
doing more on
prevention
that.
now.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of talk, and there's been a lot of things on Facebook, because I think that the message for the billboard was totally wrong.
Right.
But parenting is prevention. Parenting is prevention.
Sure.
I don't take that as blame.
No.
But a lot of parents do
Right.
when their kids are caught up in substance abuse.
Offensive.
Yes. What did I do wrong?
Right.
That my child, you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
You did the best job you could at the moment in time that you always were.
Right.
But kids make poor choices.
Sure.
How do you get them out of those poor
Exactly.
choices?
Right.
Is part of it.
Right.
So we're talking always. I can always learn to be a better mom, sister, whatever it is that I'm doing, I can always be better at
Sure.
doing it. There's always room for advancement,
Growth,
growth.
learning.
If I'm not learning something every single day, then I might as well not be here.
Right.
Then I'm dead.
Yeah.
I hope that will be, I want to learn something new every single day. So again, no criticism.
No.
It's just,
It's on the teachers too, in loco parentes,
our
in place
kids
of
aren't
parents.
born,
We're-
I didn't get a manual when my kids
No.
were born. So, it's always all new.
Sure.
But it's typically 1 in 9 will be afflicted with the disease of addiction.
Yeah.
Addiction is an adolescent disease.
Right.
And if we can get our adolescents not to use a drink or a drug
Right.
till they're 25, that is
Right.
the golden age, the chances of them ever being stricken with that disease
Right.
are almost zero.
Right.
Now, with any other disease, if I said to parents, autism, if you do these things, your child will never have autism, will never have multiple sclerosis, will never have, you would do all of those
Sure.
things. You would be diligent, you
Right.
would be vigilant, you would be everything, you would
Right.
be scrambling for more information.
Right. How
But
many?
when we talk about drugs and alcohol, we say, that's not my
That's
child.
different. Yeah.
Not my child. Well, it's not different. It's a drug.
Exactly.
It's a substance that's going into a developing brain.
Would you take your kid and get 3 meals a day at McDonald's? Of course not. Why? Because if you did that year after year, 3 meals a day at McDonald's, the kid's probably going to end up with diabetes. It's the
Diabetes,
same
heart
thing.
disease, liver disease, everything.
I mean, come on.
Supersize me.
Right.
Watch the
Right.
movie.
Right, and that's in 1 month. So there are certain things that parents and teachers, because again, I don't want to, certainly as a non-parent, I don't, but there's
All
more we
people,
could be doing.
society.
Yeah,
We all
to prevent
could be,
that.
Yes. And we have to take the stance, though. But cigarettes are legal. Alcohol is legal. Alcohol is still the #1 killer in the United States.
And we're moving closer to maybe legalizing marijuana. In some states it already has. And now you're getting at an even more challenging problem that we're faced with when you're talking about the laws and some of these groups and industries that are legal that are contributing to the problem of addiction, and the pharmaceuticals, the pharmaceutical companies. My God, how negligent. They're worse than some of the drug cartels out there. And
Absolutely.
nobody wants to really talk about that.
Of course not, especially our politicians, because a lot of them get their funding from the pharmaceutical. And it's a lobby that is so powerful in the United States. But we're going to, now we're on to something.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this message.
Welcome to Formula Auto Wash, where every day is a great day for a car wash. Open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. Sundays 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. Detailing packages for every budget, starting out at $29.99. 100% hand wash and detail centre. Hogshair and microfiber brushes and mitts. Proudly used in Ecolab Blue Coral soaps and waxes. Formula Auto Wash has served the community for over 30 years. Senior discounts all day, every day. Ladies' Day Wednesday, $3 off any wash. Early bird discount Monday through Thursday till 9:30 a.m. Check out our website, formulaautowash.com.
Shannon Gates is the #1 fence provider on Long Island, with the most inventory in stock, including vinyl, chain link, and aluminum. Gates offers a custom powder-coated system that prevents rust throughout the life of the fence. We carry fence tools to the trade. We even stock wood, rail, and glass hardware as well. Shannon Gates has our very own patented locking system. The next time you need fencing of any sort, both commercial and private, give Shannon Gates a call at 631-392-4330. You can also visit our website at shannongatesinc.com.
For professional motorcycle transport and towing, think Kickstart Fabrications Motorcycle Towing. Proudly serving all of Long Island, we feature expert handling and 24/7 service. So send a limo for your toy with Kickstart Fabrications Motorcycle Towing.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis. So we just started to really get into some very deep issues because, people think, well, we've done a really good job with cigarettes. I will say that.
Yeah.
We've done a really good job over the last 20 years with cutting down, but I do see a lot of teenagers still smoking. But still, that substance, nicotine, can light the fire of addiction in an adolescent brain that is prone
Right.
or susceptible to the disease of addiction. Alcohol is legal. That doesn't mean your 12-year-old should be drinking it.
Right.
And I've said it before, and no judgment, but how do you as a parent come home? Do you come home every night and say, I had a bad day, I'm going to have a glass of wine?
Right.
Because your 2, 3, 4, 10-year-old every day hears, I had a bad day, I'm going to have a glass of wine.
Right.
When they come home from school and have had a bad day,
Right.
well, what does my hero do?
Right.
Because your parents are your heroes.
Right.
They have a beer, they have a glass of wine, they have a drink. So it becomes associated with having a bad day and or seeing people their whole lives, family parties and happy occasions, that alcohol is involved, and this is how we have fun.
Right. You're reminding me of a story a friend of mine told me that he does not have a drinking problem either, but it was actually, he and I are colleagues, and during RAP Week at Northport Recovery Awareness and Prevention, we take time out of the class, even though, with all the things that we have to do, we make sure we take time out of the class to talk to the kids about it. And we get a little personal with them because I think it's important to share appropriately certain things with them and show them we're human. And he was telling a story that I think is very similar to what you're describing. He was saying how, I guess his daughter's maybe 5 or 6, and they were having a family party, and he had a couple glasses of wine, and he was laughing and having a good time with some of his friends, and his daughter was just quietly observing it, and he could see her looking at him, and he said, "What's up? What's up?" And she said, "You must have had a few glasses of wine, because I know, because you're laughing." And the way he described it, he realized in that moment, like, this is not good.
Right.
If my kid has this association, I'm laughing, I'm having a good time, I'm drinking. What foundation is that laying in that young kid's mind developmentally?
And kids, especially today, they know how to swipe an iPad
Right.
and start a video. They're so technical savvy
Right.
that don't ever think that they're not watching you.
Right.
Because they are watching your every move,
Yeah.
your everything
Right.
that you do.
Right.
They're just taking that all in.
Yeah.
So the ability to laugh at your mistakes
Right.
and be a fool
Right.
and be silly
Yeah.
without anything gives them freedom
Right.
to do that.
Right.
So young men, it's always said, that awkward age, 15, 16, you want to talk to a girl, but you're afraid to talk
Yeah.
to a girl. And vice versa,
Right.
by the way, on the girl side.
I'm sure.
But, it's typically, I don't know if it's typical anymore that boys still ask girls out. And you need that liquid courage.
Sure.
You don't need the liquid courage. So if we were teaching our kids that you can be silly and you can be yourself and be engaging, wow, what a gift.
Right.
What a gift we're giving them to grow up with.
Yeah.
So, we certainly need to move away. But listen, the commercials for Budweiser, for this, for everything, we're bombarded with
Right.
it all the time.
Right.
No,
And are
but
they real?
how do we show up? What is the discussion when a commercial comes on? And these are just ideas for people to take.
Right.
Of course, it's no judgment.
Right.
Never judgment. But, if your children are little, that shouldn't be the first thing that you do when you
Right.
come in the house.
Right.
Hey, you know what? I had a bad day. I would love for you to sit next to me and tell me about your day.
Right.
What a gift to give to a child.
Right.
I need a hug from you because I had a bad day, and a hug from you makes me feel amazing.
Right.
Those are powerful words
Mm-hmm.
to say to a young person. Hey, go get your bike. Let's go for a walk.
Right.
Let's walk the dog. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's just sit and watch a movie. Let's order pizza. let's have a backwards dinner and eat ice cream.
Yeah.
And if you're still hungry, we'll have dinner afterwards.
Right.
That's a fun night.
Yeah.
And I did these things,
Yeah.
and I still didn't have a great outcome. So there's never a guarantee.
No.
But I think that we can start to bulletproof different areas,
Right.
and that's what we're talking about.
Right.
I know that you, as a social studies teacher, always am teaching, making analogies
Yeah.
to history
Yes.
as appropriate to prevention.
Yes. Yeah.
So what advice would you give some teachers to do that with?
Well, I just think
Or
that
parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about the idea of a cultural revolution, I've said it before, I always liken it to the civil rights movement. That was a time in history when we recognized that there was this national crisis, this epidemic, I've heard it described as an epidemic of racism, which we'd been struggling with since our founding.
Correct.
And it took us centuries to deal with that. 1865 with the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, and then over 100 years after that, in the 1960s, having the civil rights movement take off to deal with the legacy of the Civil War and racism and bigotry and hatred. And now in 2016, we see these shootings in Dallas, and we see the shootings that have happened in so many other parts of the country. Pulse lately, one of the more recent shootings as well, targeting homosexuals, the LGBT community, the young man who walked into the church. And so President Obama is going to be having this town hall tonight, which I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has to say. And these most recent shootings in Dallas show that no one is immune to it. It was police officers that were targeted this time. So this is something that we've been struggling with for a very long time. And what we saw with the civil rights movement was you saw these coalitions being built. You saw church leaders coming together with politicians, and you had other people from other parts of the community and segments of society, everybody coming together and saying, enough, there must be change. And eventually it translated into legislative action. And over time, those laws led to changes. But it took time. That's a fundamental. It's going to take time. We have to be patient. And it took different groups of people coming together and saying,
all sectors of society again.
Right. And what we also see with the civil rights movement is we've made tremendous progress. I think in light of these terrible shootings and all the horrible things that are happening in the Black Lives Movement, I think we also have to acknowledge the progress we've made. President Obama, African American in the White House. I think that's a wonderful thing. We have to be proud of that. But I'm also not sugarcoating things. I recognize we have 2.2 million people incarcerated in this country, and most of those people are minorities. But not only are they minorities, most of those people are incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses. And here we see these two issues come together.
Most people are in jail. It has to do with substance use disorder.
Right.
But we're not making them well so
we're imprisoning them.
Right. And what good is that going to do them?
It's not going to do good at all. And then if people have the attitude, well, again, this goes back to, I think, something that you talked about in the beginning of the program. They made their choices. They made their bed. Now they need to sleep in it. And sometimes I think even that then leads to this attitude, well, it's not my problem, right? Well, let's think about
it.
It
is your problem because it costs about, I know here
$80 billion.
Right, in Yaphank,
Nationally.
it's about $55,000 to house an inmate for a year.
Right, so then expand upon that.
$15,000 to get them treatment.
Right. So it is your problem. Whether or not you recognize it, you are in some way paying for it. And God forbid that you should find yourself one day in a situation like you and I, where someone you care about and you love is taken by this disease. So whether or not you're able to see that we are all affected by this.
But does it make it any less horrific just to hear of a 21-year-old, a 25-year-old losing their struggle? The K2 now, we're watching, Dr. Jeff Reynolds spoke on Channel 4 the other day, or Channel 2, talking about K2 and synthetic marijuana. I can have parents on here from all over the state of New York. One time their child smoked. They have schizophrenia. they're psychotic, they're in a nursing home, they're locked in a ward because
Yeah.
their mind is gone.
Right.
So if a parent, and I've started to say this too because I can.
Right.
If a parent says to me, well, they're only 12, they're only 13, they're going to do what they're going to do. Well, would you give your child a gun with one bullet in it and say, pull the trigger every time the child goes out?
Right.
Maybe they'll die, maybe they won't. It's
Right.
okay.
Right.
If you're not willing to do that,
Right.
then don't send them out unprepared for the world that we live in either.
Right, and what that analogy that you tell parents, what that analogy is trying to convey to people is that this is a life or death thing. And sometimes, I feel terrible saying this, but sometimes the death can be a mercy. Because I've had many people in my family that have struggled with addiction, and my father lingered on for decades, and I had to watch him really kind of just turn into a shell of a
I
man.
can say it for myself.
Right.
I prayed for a strong, peaceful Thomas, and I have a strong, peaceful Thomas. So I never questioned that decision.
Right.
But I also know this, that if he was going to live a life, he never wanted to be
That's right.
that person.
Right.
He never wanted to be.
Right.
It was horrible
Sure.
for that body to crave
Yes.
and the mind
Yeah.
to crave
Right.
and the self-loathing because
Right.
he didn't want to be that
Right.
person. If he was going to be committed to a sentence of his life living as such, I'm okay where he is.
That's
I
what
don't
yeah.
question it,
Right.
but that's my faith
Right.
too.
That's right.
That's just my faith because I think that him and I were both chosen
Right.
to do exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
He's helping an awful lot of people
Sure.
from a different plane now.
Of course.
So we're going to continue this conversation because, believe it or not, we're out of time. So we're going to bring kids into it, and we're
Yeah.
going to bring some older, 18 to 22.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're losing,
College
we
kids.
don't have places for them to be sober.
Right.
That's a problem
Right.
because lives revolve around drinking and getting high.
Yeah.
And this is the cultural shift that we have to really talk about. But they're getting lost with the, no job market or not being able to finish school or all different, a host of,
Culture of college, that's still a very real problem. Binge drinking. You talk about the alcohol industry, they make billions of dollars off of binge drinking. Where's that happening? College-age kids.
Yes.
College campuses.
right. But the theory that if I don't allow my child in high school to drink, because when they go to college, at least they'll be ready for the experience, is pretty asinine.
Yeah, well, it's naive, right?
It's naive and it's just, it's stupid.
Right.
We didn't change the law from 18 to 21 because we wanted to.
Right.
We changed the law because there was science behind.
Right.
There was data that said if we do this, we'll have a healthier generation coming
Right.
up.
Right.
And again, I will end with the only two companies that get the age of 25 correct are your car insurance companies and your car rental companies. That's no accident that 25 is the magic age
Right.
because the brain is fully developed.
Right.
So by the grace of God go all those kids that didn't get stricken with the disease of addiction.
Right.
However, why can't we have 100% or as damn close to it as we could possibly get? Have a great week. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Thank you for joining us, and feel free to, if you need to message me on Thomas's Facebook page, Thomas Hope Facebook page, please feel free to reach out. For anybody struggling, for any family member that needs some direction, we have resources available to you, and I'm always willing to listen. Have a great week. Good night.
Another dark hotel room, musty